Announcing the Sears early opening sale. For 3 hours only, 8 to 11 a.m. tomorrow, get great savings throughout the store. Save 30% on all Mrs. Activewear.
For most of the 20th century, Sears wasn't something Americans discovered. It was something they inherited. Long before malls, highways, or big suburban shopping centers existed, Sears had already solved a problem most Americans didn't realize they shared: access. Through its catalog, Sears reached farms, mining towns, and small communities where retail choice barely existed. Families ordered entire houses, furniture, tools, and appliances from printed pages, trusting a company they would never physically visit. That trust followed Sears when physical stores expanded. As suburbs grew after World War II, Sears moved into them aggressively. By the time enclosed malls became the centerpiece of American weekends, Sears was already positioned to dominate them. Developers didn't just invite Sears in, they built malls around it. A Sears location guaranteed traffic. Smaller stores depended on it. Parking layouts, food courts, and entrances were designed with Sears as a fixed point. Inside the stores, everything reflected scale and permanence. Appliances weren't arranged to look exciting, they were arranged to look serious. Tool departments carried depth, not variety, multiple versions of the same item built to last. Clothing sections focused on durability and fit, not seasonal trends. Most competitors chased novelty. Sears chased continuity. What truly separated Sears from other retailers was how much of the purchase lifecycle it controlled. It didn't just sell refrigerators, it delivered them, installed them, repaired them, and stocked replacement parts years later. It didn't just sell tools, it guaranteed them. Craftsman tools could be replaced decades after purchase, no questions asked. Kenmore appliances were serviced through Sears' own repair network, one of the largest in the country. By the 1980s and 1990s, Sears operated more than 3,500 stores, employed hundreds of thousands of workers, and ran an internal logistics and service operation that rivaled standalone companies. Repair technicians drove branded trucks into neighborhoods daily. Credit accounts tied families to the store long-term. Large purchases were planned around Sears' delivery schedules, not impulse. This system shaped behavior. Families didn't browse Sears, they planned around it. Appliance purchases were delayed until Sears sales cycles. Tool purchases assumed long-term ownership. Returns and repairs were expected to be handled in-store, face-to-face. By the late 90s, Sears wasn't just a retailer. It was managing massive inventory, nationwide delivery routes, in-house financing, warranties, and repair obligations across thousands of locations. And while that system had been built for a slower, more patient version of American shopping, the world outside its walls was beginning to move differently. As American retail began changing its rhythm, Sears was still operating inside a structure designed for a slower country. Its stores were built for long visits, careful decisions, and planned purchases, while everyday life outside was becoming faster and more fragmented. Dual-income households became common, commuting distances increased, and shopping time shrank into narrower windows. Retailers that reduced effort and decision time benefited first, while retailers built around patience began feeling strain without seeing an immediate collapse. Sears carried weight that could not be shed easily. Each store was a full-scale operation, housing appliances, tools, clothing, home goods, seasonal products, credit desks, service counters, and repair coordination under one roof. That breadth once made Sears indispensable, but it also meant every store required high staffing levels, constant maintenance, large inventories, and complex coordination between departments. Shrinking any single part risked breaking systems that had been designed to work together. Competitors moved in the opposite direction. Walmart refined its logistics network, reducing product variation while increasing speed and price control. Home Depot narrowed its identity to home improvement and reorganized stores around fast-moving categories with high turnover. Electronics chains standardized layouts so customers could compare quickly and leave with minimal friction. These companies did not attempt to replicate Sears' all-purpose model. They removed layers until only efficiency remained. Sears kept its layers. Internally, the company became increasingly segmented. Appliances, tools, clothing, and home goods were managed as separate businesses sharing physical space rather than than as parts of a single experience. Each category had its own leadership, margins, and targets, which discouraged coordinated change. Improvements in one department did not translate into relief elsewhere. Inventory accumulated unevenly, capital became tied up in slow-moving goods, and decision-making slowed as changes required approval across multiple divisions. Operating costs hardened as flexibility disappeared. Large appliance floors occupied enormous square footage, but generated slower returns compared to retailers focused on smaller, higher turnover items. Tool departments required depth rather than variety, locking money into inventory that moved gradually. Clothing struggled to compete with retailers, refreshing collections every few weeks at lower prices. Each category alone was manageable. Together, they formed a structure that resisted adaptation. Strategic priorities shifted further away from the store floor. Valuable brands within Sears were separated and managed independently. Real estate was increasingly treated as a financial asset rather than as an environment to improve. Investment that once went toward modernizing layouts, upgrading systems, or improving logistics was redirected toward balance sheet management. Store refresh cycles stretched longer. Technology upgrades lagged behind competitors, already using real-time inventory and demand tracking to guide purchasing decisions. The 2005 merger with Kmart deepened this trajectory. The combined company controlled thousands of locations across the country, but instead of consolidating operations to modernize the retail experience, leadership emphasized internal competition and cost control. Departments were pushed to operate as profit centers, competing for resources rather than reinforcing a unified store identity. Maintenance budgets tightened, staffing levels dropped, training thinned. From the customer's point of view, nothing dramatic happened. Sears doors stayed open. Brands remained recognizable, but behavior shifted quietly. Appliance buyers increasingly researched online before visiting a store, using Sears selectively rather than instinctively. Tools were purchased during promotions rather than by default. Clothing became incidental instead of planned. Trips that once covered multiple needs narrowed into single-purpose visits. The service network, once a defining strength, began straining under uneven demand. Repair routes had been designed for density and predictability, not for scattered, declining volume. Fewer appliance sales meant fewer bundled service contracts, while technician fleets and scheduling systems still carried fixed costs. What had once reinforced loyalty now required constant throughput just to remain viable. Mall dynamics amplified these pressures. Many Sears locations were attached to older shopping centers that gradually lost traffic as retail activity migrated toward newer developments and standalone clusters. Smaller tenants adapted by downsizing or relocating. Sears absorbed the impact directly. Entire departments were closed to reduce costs. Upper floors were sealed off. Product assortments narrowed without formal announcements. The stores remained open, branded, and staffed, but they no longer functioned as complete environments. They operated in fragments, sustained by a structure built for a version of American shopping that was steadily disappearing. Sears did not vanish through a single dramatic decision, because there was never a moment when the company officially admitted it was finished. Stores continued operating across the country, signs stayed lit, and recognizable brands remained on shelves, but fewer people structured their routines around them. The decline happened in plain sight, stretched over years, quiet enough that most customers adjusted without noticing they were leaving something behind. Inside the stores, the change appeared through subtraction rather than chaos. Entire departments were sealed off with temporary walls that became permanent fixtures. Upper floors closed to the public, often without signage explaining why. Escalators were shut down to cut maintenance costs, concentrating shoppers into smaller areas of space originally designed for much higher traffic. Inventory depth declined steadily, not because products no longer existed, but because fewer categories could justify the square footage Sears had built its model around. By the mid-2010s, the scale of contraction was measurable. Sears, which once operated more than 3,500 U.S. stores at its peak, fell below 700 locations by 2017, then below 200 within just a few years. Many of the remaining stores stores operated at reduced capacity, opening fewer departments, shortening hours, and relying on minimal staffing to remain functional. These were not full-line department stores anymore, but fragments of what they had been. Employees felt the shift before customers fully understood it. Staffing levels dropped sharply as stores consolidated departments. Specialists who once handled appliances, tools, and services separately were replaced by fewer general staff covering wider areas. Training budgets were reduced, and product knowledge became secondary to basic transaction handling. The experience changed from guided purchasing to self-navigation, removing one of the last reasons customers had to stay longer than necessary. Customer behavior reflected that loss. Sears stopped being a place people browsed and became a place they entered with a single purpose. Appliance buyers arrived having already compared prices online. Tools were purchased during promotions rather than out of long-term loyalty. Clothing departments, once a routine stop, lost relevance as fast fashion retailers refreshed inventory every few weeks. Visits became shorter, narrower, and increasingly rare, even as the stores themselves remained open. Closures unfolded unevenly across the country. Some Sears locations shut down quickly, especially those tied to struggling malls. Others lingered for years, operating at low volume in oversized spaces, waiting for leases to expire or redevelopment plans to materialize. There was no nationwide announcement that marked the end, only a steady sequence of local shutdowns that made the decline feel disconnected rather than final. The impact spread outward. When Sears closed or downsized, malls lost their anchors. Foot traffic dropped, accelerating the failure of surrounding retailers. Large commercial spaces sat empty or were divided into smaller units that never recreated the same draw. In many towns, former Sears buildings became storage, call centers, or remained vacant for years, physical reminders of a retail model that no longer fit the environment around it. The brand itself never fully disappeared. Sears continued operating online. Craftsman Tools lived on through other retailers. A handful of physical stores remained open long after most customers stopped paying attention. But the version of Sears that shaped everyday American life no longer existed as a shared place. It was no longer where families planned purchases, solved household problems, or spent time together. There was no final visit for most people, no last trip that felt significant. Sears simply stopped appearing in plans. Errands rerouted elsewhere. Habits dissolved without conversation. By the time many noticed the absence, the store had already disappeared from their lives in every way that mattered.